Hey, what's going on? I'm Monz, and welcome to Monz on the Mic, where we cover all of the chaos that's unfolding in Congress. We decode Supreme Court decisions that affect us, and we delve into crazy cop stories that happen all around the country. And if you're into crazy cop stories, check out my new book, 20 and Out. It's available on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, and on Kindle. They make a great Christmas gift. So now let's dive into the disaster that's happening in our government and try and decipher it all and figure out what's really going on. So the first thing we're going to tackle is the government shutdown. We see it in the news. Airports are closed. Chaos is reigning. What is going on? Nobody understands it. So basically, in February, whoever's president submits their budget proposal to Congress. Congress debates it, goes back and forth, and by September 30th, they're supposed to pass 12 appropriations that will fund different areas of government like defense, transportation, education, etc. And then the new fiscal year for the federal government will start on October 1st. And then if everything passes and they discuss it, and all is well, we are good to go, and the government runs the way that it should. If Congress doesn't pass these bills, they will shoot for a continuing resolution, which is basically a way to buy them time. So they'll vote and say, listen, let's just keep things running the way that the previous year had set them to be, and we'll keep working on mediation and figure out how we can get this thing passed and what we'll let into the bill and what we won't, and come to an agreement. So if the continuing resolution is not voted on, which is what happened, and the appropriations aren't funded, the government shuts down. And that's what we've been dealing with for the longest amount of time in our history. So basically what happens in a government shutdown, the essential workers have to work. They don't get a paycheck. And the non-essential workers, like the guys from NASA, the guys from HUD, the EPA guys, they get sent home. Their back pay is mandatory. They always receive back pay once the government's up and running again. So why did we have this shutdown this time? What is the problem? Well, this time the Democrats wanted $26 billion to fund healthcare, Obamacare specifically, and a lot of that money was going to go to people who are here illegally, and the Republicans didn't want to fund it, and they wouldn't even budge on that. There was a standstill, and the government shut down. Now what's happening is 8 Democrats have decided that they're going to go ahead and negotiate with the Republicans and stop the shutdown. And basically, 2 of the reasons why they decided to do that is, number 1, Trump was saying, let's go with the nuclear option, which we'll discuss in a minute. And 2, he was saying that $26 billion, most of that money goes to the insurance companies. It doesn't go to the people to pay their premiums. It goes to fund the big insurance companies, and the American people are going to be in an uproar about that because it's wrong. And so the Democrats, 8 of them, decided we're going to negotiate in good faith, and we're going to open up this bill for voting because we can't obviously allow that $26 billion to get in there now. So now Schumer, who is the minority leader in the Senate, he basically plays the traffic cop. He decides what bills get brought, what appropriations are going to be voted on, and he's supposed to negotiate with leadership in the House when a shutdown is looming and talk with the White House and get on the same page, basically, so that they can avoid a shutdown. So the left is mad at him now because these 8 senators jumped ship on the Democrat Party and voted to negotiate with the Republicans and stop the filibuster and go ahead and vote on the bill. So what is a filibuster and what's the deal with this? So basically, in order to pass a bill in the Senate, you got to have 51 votes to pass it. This wasn't part of the founding. The founding fathers did not include this in the Constitution, that this was part of the structure of the Senate. But later on in the early 1800s, it started and it gained in popularity, and now is part of the status quo of doing business in the Senate, is that when you have a majority, the minority usually gets steamrolled and you don't get to have a voice or say in what bills are being passed. So what they decided is that in order for a bill to be presented, a bill is presented to the floor of the Senate and they're debated, and you have what's called a filibuster, which is a discussion of the bill, the pros, the cons. Sometimes you'll see guys up there for 19 hours talking about the bill and why it's wrong and, whatever else they want to talk about, just to prevent the bill from being brought to the floor to be voted on. So how do you stop this filibuster, this nonstop talking and debating on the bill, from happening? Well, the Senate has to vote, and they have to have 60 votes in order to stop this filibuster from happening. Once you have 60 votes, the filibuster stops, the debating stops, and now you can make a motion to bring the bill to the floor to be voted on, and the majority will vote on the bill. So it's basically a way to allow whoever is in the minority party to have a say in what goes into this bill. So because they have to have 60 votes to stop the filibuster, that's why everybody's saying, well, you need 60 votes to stop it and so that we are voted on. So now when we have the 8 Democrats coming over and saying, okay, we're going to vote to stop this, they're not actually voting for the bill. They're voting to stop the filibuster. And then the bill will be brought to the floor. And then 51 senators need to pass it to send it to the House. Now, what is the nuclear option that Trump was saying needs to be invoked? Well, the nuclear option has only been done once by each party. And basically what they do is they reinterpret the rules. Somebody will say, okay, we need to just say for this particular bill, we're just going to allow 51 votes to do it. And that's it. We're not going to filibuster it. And they've done this twice. So in 2017, the Republicans did it to stop the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees. And in 2013, the Democrats did it to stop the filibuster for lower court nominees. Why do they not do this for the spending bills? Well, because the leaders know that when they're in the minority, whoever is in the majority is going to pass whatever they want and not need any slowdown from the minority. The minority loses their voice. So instead of changing these rules, the negotiation tactic they used was the continuing resolution. So that's where we're at right now. So Schumer is getting bullied by the far left because he apparently is incapable of keeping everybody in line. The Democratic Party is basically fracturing, and he can't keep some people in line with others. And so they're saying, you're not a strong leader. It doesn't really make you look like a strong leader, so you need to get out. So Nancy Pelosi, speaking of members of Congress, she was the Speaker of the House for a long time. She recently announced that she's going to be retiring. So the timing is very interesting because they just named the suspected planter of the January 6 pipe bombs. Oh, you didn't know about the January 6 pipe bombs? Yeah. Well, on January 5th, the night before the planned march on the Capitol in protest of the voting for president, there was a lot of suspected irregularities and cheating that happened in the 2020 election. So the electors were getting together January 6th to vote on who was going to be president. And the night before, a bomb is planted at the DNC and another one at the RNC headquarters. The video was recovered during the investigation of these bombs. And it looks like there's a person who's wearing a gray hoodie, a backpack, is on a cell phone, and has these very interesting and distinct sneakers that they're wearing. So the interesting part of this is that when this bomb was planted, there was a kitchen timer on it, and the kitchen timer was like a 60-minute timer. So it was planted the night before, so it couldn't have had the capacity to go off the next day. And Kamala Harris, who was a sitting senator at the time, and she was vice president-elect, actually was at the DNC headquarters. She passed within 20 feet of this bomb. So I find it interesting because she is the president-elect of the United States, and the Secret Service is very good at their job. I've worked with them during the United Nations General Assembly in New York. And they are very thorough in their sweeps of locations before and during any of their dignitaries that are going to be wherever the location is. And so the fact that they missed this bomb being planted underneath a park bench, which was visible, the dogs missed the bomb, is very strange. Don't understand why it happened. But in any case, she's at the DNC headquarters at 1:07 p.m. They discover the bomb. She's inside of the location. In 7 minutes, she's evacuated from the location, and the investigation begins. So they recover the video from the planting of the incident, and then they go ahead to try and use cell tower and cell phone information to geo-fence the area and identify who this person was that planted these bombs. So now you have a congressional hearing, and you got this guy, Stephen D'Antuono. He was the agent in charge of the Washington field office when this happened, and he testified that the cell carrier provided to the FBI files that were corrupted, and they couldn't be read and figured out, and the data wasn't good. So the cell carriers came back and said, no, the data was good. We don't know what you're talking about. In any case, the cell phone information, basically, the FBI said was a dead end, and they couldn't do anything with it. Okay. I've done a lot of cases with cell phone data and triangulating and geofencing and identifying people, and I've never come across corrupted data. But What's interesting about this guy, D'Antuono, retired from the FBI in 2022, 7 months before this testimony to the House Judiciary Committee. He says now, or he was at the time, a partner at KPMG US and has expertise in financial crimes investigations. So who's KPMG? Well, they are a Big Four firm. They do audits, consulting on risks like cybersecurity risks for government agencies. They do investigations for fraud and corporate misconduct. KPMG consults with the CIA and NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations, and they work with them. And also other clients are members of USAID or partners and international aid organizations. KPMG has bid for work in the intel community, and for the past 10 years at least, their contracts totaled over $100 million. There is no listed income for this guy, D'Antuono, but he was listed as a partner, and partners' income varies from $400,000 to $1 million based on compensation. So there's a lot of interesting things that come out of this January 6th thing, aside from the quote-unquote assault on the Capitol. You have somebody who plants pipe bombs at the DNC and RNC. Kamala Harris is at the DNC when the bombs are discovered, basically attempted assassination, and she never mentions this ever in any interview, doesn't talk about it, which you would think they would want to bring out to light because that's a major incident. And it also plays into their being victimized by these insane right-wing people who took over the Capitol. And look at this, they planted a bomb too. They wanted to kill the vice president-elect. So nothing is ever said. So now this guy, Steve Baker, who is a investigative reporter for Blaze Media, is reporting that Shawnee Kirkhoff, who was a former Capitol police officer, allegedly matches the person who planted the bomb. How does he know this? They say they did forensic gait analysis, which is how she's walking, and they have corroborating sources. So from what it sounds like to me, basically somebody pointed them in the right direction of this person. They identified the person, got video of her walking as a Capitol police officer and compared it to the video that was recovered of the bomber. And it's supposedly a 94% match. Steve Baker's also saying that Kirkhoff has a job now with the CIA. So allegedly she plants this bomb while she's a Capitol police officer and now works for the CIA. The CIA is not confirming or denying. And she also has not come out to confirm or deny this, which frankly, if somebody was accusing me of planting bombs and trying to take the life of a vice president-elect, I would be on every major news outlet saying this is not me, I am suing for defamation. But there's been radio silence on that one, so we don't know what's going on with that. And the FBI has not charged her or anyone else with this crime. It occurred 5 years ago. It's amazing to me that we're able to geofence and geolocate all of these, how many hundreds of thousands of people that were at January 6th and find them and arrest them and bring them to trial and they're doing jail time. But we can't find a person who intentionally placed bombs at DNC and RNC headquarters. I'm not really following that logic. But what's interesting on top of that is that you have a pipe bomber or the alleged planter supposedly now has a job at the CIA, and an FBI senior executive who said the cell phone files were corrupted and they couldn't identify the planter got a job for a company that works closely with the CIA. So this reminds me kind of the Whitmer kidnapping incident, where there's some kind of shadiness and it's not all really entirely clear on what's going on. And ironically, as I looked into the Whitmer kidnapping, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she was the governor of Michigan, there was an attempted plot to kidnap and potentially kill her. D'Antuono, who was the head of the Washington field office, happened to be the head of the FBI field office in Detroit during that investigation into Governor Whitmer's kidnapping. He was there from September 2019 to October 2020. So 5 days after the FBI announces the arrest of all these individuals involved in the Whitmer attempted kidnapping plot, he gets a promotion and is brought to the Washington field office. So that's how he ended up there on January 6th. To go into the Whitmer case, because I don't know if you're following it when it happened, but it was pretty interesting what ended up coming out of it in trial. The FBI arrests 14 members of a right-wing militia group called the Wolverine Watchmen. They believe that they're named the Wolverines because that's the mascot of Michigan. But the FBI used 12 CIs and 2 undercovers to investigate these 14 people. So in my mind, you have the same amount of people working for the FBI that are being investigated by the FBI in this case. Seems like a bit of a tangled web. But the information that came out during trial was that an agent who was working on the case texted one of his informants who, by the way, the informant was paid $50,000 for his work on the case. The FBI agent texted the informant, "The mission is to kill the governor," specifically. So members of this group said the idea should be put on the back burner when they started this. The leaders were hesitant. There was a lot of testimony that came out that said that they were indecisive, they were drunk, they had crazy ideas that they were going to leave her on a boat in the middle of a lake. And they basically came up with these ideas, backpedaled, and then said, nah, we're not going to do this. This is crazy. And what came out is that the informant who the FBI agent had contacted said that he continued to promote and press the idea of kidnapping the governor. He also suggested other crimes like firing rounds into Governor Whitmer's house. And so the defense basically argued that the FBI planted the idea of the kidnapping into the heads of this militia group and not the other way around. So this is entrapment. And when I was a detective working cases, it's a very fine line, and you do not ever want to cross it or come near it. So what entrapment is, a government agent or a person working for the government, whether it be federal agents, the NYPD, whoever it is, if you are working for that agency and you convince somebody to do something they wouldn't ordinarily do, if you plant a seed in their head and encourage them to do it, that's entrapment. If you came to me and said, hey, let's go rob a bank, and I said, yeah, but you work for the government, and then you help me by facilitating, by providing me with a plan and a vehicle and all this other stuff, that's bordering on entrapment. And we stay very far away from that because it destroys cases and it's totally unethical, besides the legalities that go around it. But so the defense was arguing that what the FBI did here was that they went out, they searched out this group there was apparently a well-known right-wing group, and they infiltrated it. They planted these seeds. And this is the reason why this kidnapping plot was even started in the first place. So at the end of the day, 5 guys are found guilty. 5 guys are found not guilty. 2 of the guys flipped. They took a plea. They got a couple of years in prison each. Of the 5 who were found guilty, 2 had to be retried because the jury was deadlocked on the entrapment issue. Did the FBI go after these people, or was the information brought to the FBI and then they conducted an investigation? The Chicago Sun-Times, a very reputable and credible paper, wrote a lot on this entire trial. What was interesting to me is that recent testimony by FBI whistleblowers has come out. They testified to the House Judiciary Committee that the FBI has made up domestic violence extremism cases to support a political narrative, including targeting of conservative groups. The Wolverine Watchmen takedown happened in October in 2020. Trump was president, and the spin at the time was that the FBI arrest was displaying that the right-wing groups were targeting the left, and the Democrats, and right-wing extremism was a rising danger in America. So whether that is true or not, the whistleblowers, there's multiple whistleblowers coming out and saying this. So the difference is that we have an FBI who has a credibility problem right now. They have several cases that are high profile, and their investigative procedures are questionable, in my opinion. So it remains to be seen what happens with this January 6th pipe bomb with the person. Is the FBI going to subpoena this person? Are they going to bring her in for questioning? Does she have an alibi that can be corroborated to say that she wasn't there and this wasn't her? But when you go out on a limb and allege that somebody committed a crime, you better have the evidence to back up your claim, or you're going to be in some trouble. So it'll be interesting to file that and see what happens. So we'll keep up to date with that. So the Supreme Court listened to arguments this week from the Trump administration versus small business owners that the tariffs are illegal that Trump has placed on countries. So basically, to go back to the beginning of the story, Trump does not explicitly have in the Constitution, or any president, not just Trump, any president does not explicitly have in the Constitution the right to impose tariffs on any country. That right is granted solely to Congress in Article 1, Section 8. However, Congress has allocated tariff powers to the president under certain circumstances. What are those circumstances? Well, one was the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which says that if the Secretary of Commerce finds that imports are in such quantities or in such circumstances that the national security is threatened, the president can impose a tariff or tax on stuff coming from that country. So Trump has done that with steel imports from basically every single country in the world, citing that our national security is at risk if we import steel from other countries. And the specifics of that, you can just think on your own. It's sub-quality. It puts our companies out of business. The second authority that Congress granted the president was the Trade Act of 1974, which empowers the U.S. Trade Representative, who is currently Jamison Greer, he's a member of Trump's cabinet, that he can act against foreign governments that have a policy or practice that is unjustifiable, unreasonable, or discriminatory and burdens U.S. commerce. And then the third power that Congress granted the president is the International Emergency Powers Act. And this is where Trump has been pulling from to articulate why he needs to put tariffs on a lot of these countries. And basically, it allows the president, once he declares a national emergency due to an unusual and extraordinary threat, which originates from outside the U.S., to regulate commerce to and from that country via tariffs to stop any imports basically from coming in from those countries. So that's what he's done in China and the European Union and Thailand and Laos. So the current case in front of the Supreme Court is specifically because of this avenue that Trump has been utilizing. So Trump is arguing that the tariffs he placed on countries that are sending fentanyl to America, as well as the reciprocal tariffs that are placed on countries, are unfair and cause a national crisis, the fentanyl crisis, and it has to be done to stop them from doing it, to motivate the country's government to stop fentanyl from being imported into our country. The attorney that represents the small businesses bringing this lawsuit is arguing that if this is allowed, if these tariffs are allowed to be designated by the president alone, the president can overhaul the entire tariff system, and another president could maybe potentially declare a climate emergency and impose huge tariffs without fines, without floors, without ceilings. So the question posed to the Supreme Court is, does the president have the authority to use this broadly? Does the Congress need to make it clearer what the restrictions are? Or does it violate the Constitution entirely? So why do we care about this? Why is this such a big deal? Well, Trump is arguing that without these tariffs, foreign countries like China can sell stuff to us cheaper. That hurts our manufacturing companies because we can't afford to make, and sell things at that cheap of a rate. And he also says that imports like steel are critical for defense and can be vulnerable if we don't have tariffs. He argues that the use of force behind tariffs are a bargaining chip that he uses when dealing with other countries and trade deals. We have no bite if we can't impose tariffs. And as we have seen, it takes Congress forever to do anything. And these tariffs are very fluid. It's a day-to-day thing. It's a constant negotiation practice. Tariffs are raised, tariffs are pulled away, tariffs are implemented, tariffs are pulled back. So taking this power away from the president will hurt the country, is basically what he's saying. The tariffs also bring in major revenue for the government, which can offset our debt, and it simultaneously creates manufacturing jobs because American companies can compete with the cost of products that are coming in from all of these other countries because they're having to charge more to make a profit. It doesn't necessarily provide us with cheaper goods, but it does provide us with better paying jobs. So the interesting fact of this is that a lot of economists were predicting that once these tariffs were in place, our economy would crash. It was all doomsday predictions. But according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the second quarter of 2025 showed a GDP increase of 3.8%, which is very good growth. Economy is chugging along. So we don't know what the Supreme Court is going to decide. We don't know when that decision is going to come out. But when it comes out, I'll keep you updated and we will see what happens with our economy and if the powers of the president are going to be reined in or if Congress is going to have to clarify what they mean by allowing the president to have this tariff power. So now we're going to get into some crazy cop stuff, which is always fun to see the insanity that goes on. Sometimes it's so unbelievable. It's like you've got to be making it up. Is this AI? But I can assure you, experiencing a lot of crazy stuff firsthand, this happens all the time. Today's post is going to be from Instagram, from Cops Getting Crazy. And it is a police officer that apparently took somebody for a ride along and had a surprise that he was not expecting. So let's take a look at it.
Doing? You're not supposed to have a firearm. Drop it. Drop it. Drop it. Walk to the car. Walk to the car. Hands. Put your hands on the car. Who said you could have a firearm on a ride-along? Huh?
I don't know. I just trying to see what was going on, you know?
All right. Well, you're not supposed to have a firearm on you.
Trying to explore my options, man.
No. Did they not explain it to you when you were signed up for the program?
I thought I was about to be the policeman.
No, you're not the policeman. No way are you the policeman. This is a community outreach program, and whoever told you that that was okay? No way.
I thought I was a policeman
No.
like you.
No.
I was coming for backup, man. I was coming to give you some backup.
I appreciate that, but you're not a police officer. You're a community ride-along outreach person.
I thought you needed backup, man. I was trying to give you some backup.
I appreciate that, but you're not allowed to have a gun. Why would you have a gun on you?
It's legal in Florida.
I understand that it's legal in Florida.
I was trying to help you out, man. Give you some suppressing fire, man.
Oh, that's good stuff. I love that guy. He is a classic. That is hysterical. You don't want to have a gun on a civilian that's behind you. That is, God forbid he takes that out and pulls the trigger by accident. I mean, yes, in Florida, the court actually just overturned the concealed carry that you can open carry down here. But when you're doing a ride along, don't be carrying a gun, because the cop has to now worry about you affecting his safety as well. And if you're a cop, as a important note, don't let somebody into the back of your RMP or police car without tossing them first and making sure that they don't have any weapons on them. When I was a cop in the NYPD, we would do ride-alongs with people regularly, sometimes from the news or just regular citizens who were just interested in finding out what really happened with police. And I appreciated it because at least they're trying to understand what we did every day and how difficult the job was. But they would have to sign a waiver and wear a bullet-resistant vest that went basically from their shoulders to their knees. And they were instructed to not get out of the vehicle for any reason. But this guy actually thought that it looks like he was going to back this cop up, and he was just going to start letting rounds go at whoever was there so that the cop could get away. But so thank you to that citizen for having our back. But please don't bring guns on ride-alongs, and cops, toss your perps. So that's going to sum up this episode of Monz on the Mic. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any ideas for episodes, or if you have some stuff that you see in the news that maybe you don't have time to break it down yourself and you'd like me to break it down here in a nice, concise format, throw me a line at monzonthemic@aol.com. And while you're perusing Amazon for some Christmas gifts, why don't you check out my book, 20 and Out. It's a compilation of chaos experienced in 20 years in the New York City Police Department. It's in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle, and it makes a great Christmas gift. And we thank you very much, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.